Well, hi there. How are you guys doing today? I made it here by the skin of my teeth. So thank you guys. Thank you for your patience. Sorry we had to get started an hour late. I'll give you a quick update. So Alicia, as you probably gathered, she's expecting our next child soon, and we're really excited about that. And she was having some pain that kind of suggested that she might have a kidney stone. She hasn't had them before with pregnancy, but we have a lot of friends that have. And, those alone can be, a big deal potentially if not treated. And if it was something worse, it's just like constant stabbing pain in your kidneys. So that's the kind of thing that we didn't want to leave to chance. And so we went into the Instacare. I saw some people as I was waiting for the prescription. I hopped on here and saw a little bit of the chat. Thank you guys so much for your concern over us, over Alicia, and your kind words and prayers. We appreciate all of that very, very, very much. I'll give you an update as far as the safety of going out to an Instacare here in Utah. Obviously, going anywhere, especially indoors, is not ideal at this point in time. Here in Utah, we've actually been very fortunate that COVID-19, the outbreak has never been very severe here. Fairly limited number of cases. We're just a lower population density. Doing something like this, say in New York City or Chicago or someplace like that, would be considerably scarier. And so, we limit our contact with things like that as much as we can, but it's about as safe as it can be, all things considered. So anyway, we are back here. Leisha will probably come here in the room. She was planning. She's been feeling up to it. And we thought, this might be her last week being able to help me co-host on our live streams. And I should mention, if one of these weeks I just don't show up, you will know what has happened. But anyway, she might come into the room, but I've got Jason here to help me. I asked, how hard would this be to do by myself? And he said, I think you'd have a really hard time. The comments come in fast and furious. It would be pretty intense for me. So hopefully you can hear Jason okay. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Hopefully you like my outfit for today. A little different. This is just the way it is. If you want me to, I'll chuck a tie on top of all this so you feel more comfortable. You're like, who is this hoodie guy? I don't know if I trust him. But I've got a lot of cool stuff planned for today. I'm really stupendously excited. I have this mystery box that Jason gave me. There's, I don't know, some stuff in there. I'm supposed to not squish it, and I was also supposed to not look at it. So I have not looked at it. I don't know what it is. I've got something really, really cool that was recently sent to us. And these come to us from our friend Kennedy, who offered to send these to us. And I got to tell you, I wasn't quite expecting what I got. So you'll have to hang on and see that. A glove will be needed. One of my students. So this is actually the second time in my life this has happened to me. When I was in high school, I had a friend who kept a notebook of my quotes that I would say. Yeah, it's kind of flattering and fun. Apparently, I had a lot of silly stuff to say. I'm sure none of you have ever heard me say anything silly or goofy or anything like that. But apparently, I occasionally say things that are amusing. And anyway, this last year, in one of my classes, so I've been teaching at two different places this last year. I taught at the Utah Valley University, where I've been teaching there for a number of years. But I also taught some classes. So they're UVU classes, but I've been teaching them as concurrent enrollment courses at a local charter high school. And so it was actually in my so it's still a college class, but I was teaching it at that high school, one of the students there kept a notebook of my quotes. And then she just, now that the semester's over, she typed it all up and sent it out to me and the entire class. And I asked permission to share them, but I haven't been through them yet. So hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? Should I start with a question, a quote, a piece of mail? What do you think?
Let's start with a Patreon question.
Okay, Patreon question. Patreon.
And we should mention why we do some Patreon questions at the beginning.
Yeah. So we often you'll hear we intersperse these Patreon questions, and we have so many amazing supporters at Patreon, and like I can't tell you how much they have done for our channel. I saw some of you earlier asking, do you guys go herping ever? Yeah, I love to go herping. What we haven't had in the past has been the equipment required to make a half-decent video about herping. Well, because of Patreon, now we have that equipment. So this summer, I intend to do a heck of a lot of herping and share that with you guys because it's so much fun. It's just like if you couldn't hear me talking, video quality was terrible. Patreon has made that possible. Patreon has done so much for us, and I feel like we want some way to give back to them as a way of saying thank you for all they do for us. And so one of the things we do is we give them an opportunity to pre-submit some questions to Jason. I don't get to see them, but they pre-submit them to Jason, and Jason usually tries to get through all of them. So that's one thing that we do for our patrons at Patreon. Anyway, where were you, good sir?
Perfect. All right. Tyler Lashbrook says, people love morphs, but is there any validity to breeding for personality/temperament? I'd love to see what tame reptiles look like in 1,000 years. Oh,
that is such a rad question. So the question, in case you couldn't hear it, let me know if you can't hear Jason well. I'll turn him up or something. But the question is, about morphs. In addition to being able to breed for coloration and stuff, can you breed for temperament? And the reality is, yes, you can. Totally can. Color and pattern sorts of mutations are not the only sorts of mutations that are out there. And so, you'll notice there's considerable variation in personality between individuals and even between morphs. For example, spider ball pythons, for example, are notoriously really good feeders. So that that's one thing that they seem to like to eat. Lesser ball pythons, in my experience and the experience of a lot of other people, tend to be extra mellow, even compared to other ball pythons. So there's things like that. Some morphs and just some lines, can be extra aggressive. And this is just ball pythons, but you have this kind of thing across the board. So those are situations where there is a potentially a pleiotropy or a linkage between a behavioral and a color pattern morph. But additionally, there's going to be variation just in their behaviors. You've probably heard of instincts before. Well, instincts are just kind of ingrained behaviors that are encoded in their DNA and are heritable. They can pass them on from generation to generation. They don't need to be taught. They don't need to learn. They just know how to do that. And so you can select for them. And so you could select absolutely for more mellow individuals, especially if you're bringing in kind of mellow individuals from the outside. What you're going to end up doing, probably to a large degree, though, is line breeding, which can lead to inbreeding suppression and issues like that. Also, just the kind of health problems that you have in purebred dogs. They're just line-bred dogs. The other thing is that's going to be a little bit different from, like, if you're domesticating reptiles versus domesticating mammals, is that reptiles, they tend to hatch out of the egg behaviorally very similar to adults. So sometimes, they might be more defensive or something like that. But generally speaking, they've got similar behaviors to adults because they're not receiving parental care. They're just on their own, doing their own thing for the most part. Mammals tend to sometimes hatch out or be born, and then require a lot of parental care. And early in life, they're a lot more helpless. They're a lot less aggressive. They're a lot more laid back and lovable. and willing to interact with others of their species and stuff, because that's important for them as a baby. And in a lot of cases, when we've domesticated mammals, what we have selected for are individuals that never really mature. It's called neoteny. And it is essentially when you're selecting for individuals that maintain those juvenile attributes and never mature into adults that behave like adults. And so I might not expect reptiles to domesticate to quite the same level that mammals can, but you can totally select for behavior just depending on what variation is present in the population. Was that nerdy enough?
Super nerdy.
That was super nerdy.
There's actually a second question that actually is along the same lines.
Let's do it. I can still be nerdy without my tie, guys. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that.
He says, any thoughts on domestication of reptiles? Currently, I don't think any reptile kept as a pet can be considered domesticated, only tame. Do you think we should work towards domesticating reptiles like monitors and peggies and bearded dragons, along the lines of the Russian fox, maybe? I know there's quite a bit of overlap from what you were just talking about. Just wondering if you had any additional thoughts.
Yeah. Well, again, so what I have discussed up to now is whether or not we could. And to a degree, absolutely. The new question is whether or not we should. And that is a completely different question. I think it depends a lot on exactly what you want from a pet reptile. There are some people who are very against hybrids and breeding of morphs and things like that because you're altering the wild phenotype. And I think there's a perfectly good rationale for that. Like, I got to tell you, when it comes to any species, if I can only have one of it, I want it to be the wild type, because I want to see, what is actually working the best in nature. But in captivity, like, the selective pressures are completely different. And it really depends on, like, what do you want from a pet? I mean, I think wolves are cooler than domestic dogs, but I would rather have a domestic dog than a wolf. And so, in some ways, selecting for temperaments that make them more suited to captivity, I would say, especially if it makes them more willing to feed and just more likely to thrive in captivity. And then, of course, potentially if they're easier to interact with, that makes a lot of sense for the pet trade. If I was breeding a population to re-release into the wild, I would be coming at this from a completely different angle. But for the pet trade, it seems reasonable to me. But where you could run into an issue sort of is, like, you would find it very difficult at this point in time to find a wild type leopard gecko. And it's largely just because we bred so many morphs into them that, nobody really has a pure wild type leopard gecko. Wild type leopard geckos have so many spots, they're like almost black looking. They're really cool. But the ones you find in captivity almost never look like that. And it's just because, we've bred so many morphs in. And I would hate to lose the wild type from the pet trade. I think this will probably happen with ball pythons soon, because virtually nobody breeds wild type ball pythons. The wild type ball pythons you see for sale are the ones that weren't morphs in morph clutches, and now that they're getting so many morphs in them, there will come a time when you will almost never get a wild type ball python out of a ball python breeding. And to me, to a degree, that would be a shame. Anyway, there you have it.
Perfect.
Nerdy without a tie.
It is time to open the unknown package.
The unknown package? Oh boy.
Yes.
All right, everybody, gear up. I don't know. Is it one thing or many things?
You're just going to have to open it.
Okay. The unknown package. It doesn't even... Let's see. It's from Madison. Okay. Okay. There's paper. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Guys! Super chat! Okay. Are you ready? I don't know if I'm ready for this. Jason! How did you keep this under wraps? This is the greatest thing in the world. Oh my gosh.
So she recorded it. There's a lovely couple sent it, and they sent pictures. So you should look at those pictures. A lovely couple sent it, and they recorded her. They tried to record you, but it didn't. Well, the quality wasn't good enough, so they recorded her. But it allows you to record, so you can record and do your own version.
I see. It's got a record and then a play. This is magical. This is magical. Guys, are you as excited? Oh, it's magical. So it's Madison and Jacob Samford. And they've sent a nice, wonderful letter and a picture of their bearded dragon, I assume, named, so it's Bindi. So that's either named after a crocodile or a crocodile hunter's daughter. Let's see. Azalea, and apparently evil green iguana. Guido, who is a leopard gecko. Oh my gosh. Phoebe, who is a weird wolf. And Colby, another weird wolf. And Doug, another weird wolf. And Susie, another weird wolf, who happens to be Doug's mom. I gotta tell you. Oh, and let's see. Okay, and I'm gonna make sure I get there. And and here's Madison and Jacob on their honeymoon. They went to Mexico. Oh, and it looks like are those lorikeets you guys are feeding? This is amazing, guys. I don't think I can even express how excited I am about this. Oh, nothing but super chats from now on. Oh my gosh, I can't. I am so glad I didn't peek into that box. Because I don't think I could have known I would be this excited about the super chat button. It's wonderful. Thank you.
All right. They have officially opened the floodgates on super chat. So let's take a few of those while we're at it, shall we? All right. A super chat from Keegan Day is: are African rock pythons the worst big pet snakes?
No. They're not. And I will tell you, I like all the big snakes. I like them a lot. I think for most people, here's the deal with all of the big snakes. All of the big snakes are big enough to kill you if you're handling them alone. Okay? Or if you're interacting with them and they get you when you're alone. And so the main thing with the big snakes is if you're going to have to interact with them, including feeding, cleanings, all that stuff, and you aren't going to have other people there to spot you, it's real dangerous. And African rock pythons have a reputation for being bitier, which is a big deal with a giant snake. I mean, this is a snake that eats impalas, so it's a big snake. And they have a reputation for being bitier than retics and berms. Now, I would wager money they're bitier than berms, because berms are just about as low-key as a snake can be. It's just if it happens to get you, you might die. Probably won't, right? Because usually it'll just tag you. Like, it's just trying to tell you to leave it alone. But if it was a feeding response and it wrapped you, there'd be nothing you could do to stop it, right? You'd just be at its mercy unless someone's there to help you. Retics, they're a little, they're very smart. They're really interesting snakes, but it's sort of like a carpet python in a giant body as far as behavior goes. And the African rock pythons, if you got a captive bred baby, it's probably no worse than that. But they have kind of a bad reputation, but they're probably really not that bad. The one that I would say is the worst would be the green anaconda. And not necessarily because of temperament, though they aren't like consistently friendly. So it's very likely that you could end up with a 20-foot, 300-pound anaconda that also hates people. I mean, that can absolutely happen. But then on top of that, they're real strong, unbelievably strong. And they need, a semi-aquatic setup. So just the keeping of them is much worse. So that's the worst one. Sorry. Back to it more.
We've got an awesome super chat from Northwest Fancy Fuzzies. They say, as a pet rat breeder for 5 years, I can attest that breeding towards temperament and health is absolutely achievable. The difference between rats I produce now and what I started with is crazy.
That and again, these being mammals, especially mammals like a rat that are really social and really intelligent. I find that not shocking at all. Rats, as it turns out, are amazing pets, but not if you get like a one that hasn't been bred for temperament and it's already an adult and not socialized. Like then it's a monster. But if you get a socialized juvenile bred as a pet, I mean they're amazing. They're amazing. I mean, they don't live very long. If you got one to live 4 years, it'd be like, wow, what are you doing? But they're special creatures. I love them. They're some cool. I should do a rat video sometime. Let me know if you guys would like to see a rat video. But a really cool study, a while back. So organisms tend to not do favors for other organisms unless they're getting something in return, or they're closely related, because then they're kind of looking out for their own genes. Well, rats, I won't get too deep into the study right now, but rats will do all kinds of things to help out other rats, even when they're perfect strangers, when they're not related at all. Rats are they're good people. And I'm a huge fan of rats. Feeding rats to things has honestly been one of the bigger moral conflicts, I've struggled with as a reptile keeper. When we get into some of the other debates that we have in reptile keeping, I'm like, really? This is the thing we're worried about? Because feeding rats to a snake, that is a serious gray area for me. Leash!
All right.
That's incredible. I love it.
She just expressed, for somebody who's going through as much discomfort as she is, a huge amount of enthusiasm for the super chat button. Sorry, back to you.
All right. Let's see. Brett sent a super chat. He says, "Hi, Clint. I have a pair of male and female lined day geckos. Should I let the tank dry out between mistings? Thanks."
Oh, yeah. I would keep, as far as humidity goes, something like what you would do with crested geckos. You don't want it just sopping in there all the time, or you can have health issues.
Perfect. All right, let's switch back over to some Patreon questions.
Okay, Patreon.
We need another dang button. Nick Moore says, "Can you possibly talk about, or even make a video of some techniques you use to tame your lizard? I've had a Australian water dragon now for about 2 months. He's about a year old and is very skittish. Just wondering the best way to go about taming him so he can become better at handling, and any other advice you have as an owner of one of those super rad guys."
Absolutely. I may make a whole video myself, because I've been working. I have 2 baby bearded dragons I've been raising up that are from the clutches that I produced last year, and one of them is pretty low key, and the other is like a wild bearded dragon. I mean, just mouth open. He'll bite you. A lot of times they're all bluff. He is not. He will bite you, and he's just a grumpy sort. And so my life's been crazy, so I haven't had a ton of time to work with them, but I've been working with them more deliberately over the last couple weeks, and I've seen huge improvements in that dragon. Like, I can just go in there and pet him now. He still doesn't want me to pick him up, but we're getting somewhere, and it's happening fast. And so I've got some good techniques. Additionally, we do have a video coming up in the coming weeks that I don't know if you guys will know to be as excited about this as you should be, but it is like a master class given by Kevin McCurley from Nerd. Kevin, he is a lizard whisperer. Oh, okay, and snake. All he's a reptile whisperer, and I think there's a lot to it. And one of the things that I've learned about him is I've gotten to know him more personally. I've been blown away by the the way he has worked with his animals for years, but actually getting to spend time with him and communicate with him regularly and everything, and just see the way that he lives his life. He spends a lot of time just in the presence of reptiles, observing them in ways that very few people ever have, and he just knows their psychology. Probably. I mean, there aren't going to be very many people on the whole planet that could come anywhere close. And he was kind enough to record sort of a master class on socializing reptiles while we were out at Nerd, and so we will be releasing that in the next few weeks. Be excited. Be very excited.
It'll be good. It's coming up pretty quick. All right. Elena Waldman asks, what's your take on inverts as pets, like Madagascar hissing cockroach or tarantula?
I love both of those things ever so much. I actually just recently, some fans gave us a full colony of Madagascar hissing cockroaches. I will tell you a secret. Like this is a great breeding colony of Madagascar, it's a breeding colony. It's a great feeder colony of Madagascar hissing cockroaches. I have never fed a Madagascar hissing cockroach to anything because I love them too much. They're just, I can't do it, right? Dubias, I like dubias a lot, but I can part with dubias. The Madagascar hissing cockroaches, they're just lovely creatures. And I've had tarantulas most of my life. We'll actually be talking about tarantulas pretty soon. So stay tuned.
All right, let's switch over to Super Chat.
Super Chat!
When am I going to stop being filled with joy every time I hit that button, Jason? How long will it happen?
Let's see. Michael Wall says, check out the Mink Man. He trains minks to hunt rodents, and he started to train an Argus monitor to do the same. Even gives up mice for meat. Yeah,
well, he's actually fairly local, and one of my friends who often comments about, he tells me about videos when people talk about us, or if he thinks that they're relevant to things that we're gonna do. His name's Jason. We may have him on. He's a botanist, and I think a lot of us have real interest in terrarium plants and things like that. It'd be good to have him on sometime. But he told me about that, and so I watched his video where he was trying to pick a monitor between the Asian water monitor and the Argus monitor. Looks interesting. I've heard the videos can be a little bit brutal, which is not shocking. He basically does falconry, except he does it with minks and now monitor lizards, and that's very, very cool. It's just I am not a hunter. I can tolerate some stuff, but I take no joy from seeing that kind of thing. So I don't know how I feel about it, but it's really interesting project, and it'll be cool to see what he finds out.
All right.
Thank you for the chat.
Super chat from Jeremy.
Super Chat!
Hey, Clint.
I can do super chat with a mouthful of water now, Jason.
Super chat.
Sorry, what were you saying?
This is an awesome super chat from Jeremy Farkas. He says, hey, Clint, I got a captive-bred Moroccan Euro, and while I wait for it to arrive, I'm setting up the enclosure. Basking spot is 130-ish, I'm assuming, degrees. Cool end is 80. Is that way too hot, or am I psyching myself out?
You're psyching. So, yeah, as long as it can get pretty cool and far away from that hot spot, that should be great. That should be great. Euros like it hot. And consult some really good care sheets for specific recommendations for that species. But that sounds good. That sounds good. And you can always move the lamp farther away or get it closer to get that, or you can build up your basking spot higher or lower, and that can take care of that.
Awesome. Let's do some Clintisms.
Oh!
The Notebook.
The Notebook. This is my laptop, by the way. It's cutting edge. It's from 2009, and it's looking great. It's looking great. Oh, dear. Okay. So let me see here. Okay. I'll go through them quickly. Some of them There's no context on them. All right. Quote number 1. Stuff be different. That is the definition I give them of variation. Okay, well, on the first day of class, variation, stuff be different. Because it does. I don't know what that's referring to. Life be changing. I think that's probably the definition of evolution. Life be changing. Okay, here's one that I think is actually really relevant. All models are wrong, but some models are useful. Has that ever been more relevant ever than now? Right? Because, you know, when you're doing science, you're modeling things. I actually want to do a new video on science, but when you're doing science, you're trying to model reality, and there's always levels of complexity you're not aware of that aren't part of your model. And so there's always going to be some amount of wrongness to a model, but sometimes they get close enough that they can be very, very useful. And that's why we make them. Okay, plants be crazy. Sorry, you might not find this as funny as I do, but here we are. This is, she says, if you don't understand it, which I think is referring to me. If I don't understand it, it's just witchcraft. That's usually how I refer to chemistry. Chemistry, pretty much just witchcraft. I had 4 semesters of college chemistry, by the way. They never really describe to you, when you're not a chemistry major, why it works. They just tell you memorize this. So it's all witchcraft as far as I'm concerned. Buckets. I think that is my term for the amount of ATP that comes out of certain parts of cellular respiration. We could all use a little more eyeball energy. I don't know what that even is. Show them with statistics. I like it. Because you can't just walk in and be like, I did an experiment, and it seems to me this is what was happening. You got to show them with statistics or it ain't science. That's no place to be as a tree. Talking about how trees tend to drop their seeds directly under themselves, which is a horrible place to try to grow as a tree. What about 105? Brain damage. Ooh, cyanide is an amazing antibiotic. so, doctor, these pills are broken. Oh, there's a lot more weirdos than there used to be. Sorry, some of this may make no sense out of context, but it's pleasing me. You're way into pesticides for understandable reasons. All of my friends are dead.
Wow.
That was a delicious snake, by the way. Thank you. When you're a noodle with a head, you will lose most fights. Thanks for being a billboard. I've been a farmer a lot today. At the end of the day, all definitions are made up. Okay.
You are cracking yourself.
Yeah, kill me. My sense of humor is just my speed. I'm so sorry, guys. Oh yeah, and they do what any sane parent would do. You feed all the offspring you can afford to, and gobble up all the rest. As it turns out, elephants are heavy. Okay, I'll pause there. That's 1 page. I think there are four pages of this. I gotta tell you, I have discovered, some of you may have noticed, I crack a lot of jokes. And I've only realized in the last couple of years, they're entirely for my own amusement. And so a lot of times I deliver them in a way that doesn't really draw attention to them. So if somebody's not quite on my wavelength, they won't even know I was joking. They'll just think I'm an idiot. And I actually have some friends that thought I was an idiot for a very long time before they discovered I was joking. And whenever there's somebody else who apparently is on my wavelength, like I find it hilarious. And this student apparently was completely on my wavelength all semester long, and that amuses me. Oh, thanks for putting up with me. You guys are the best.
Nice.
Oh.
All right. Let's do some Patreon questions.
Patreon.
All right. This is Alex Devalier. He says, as first-time reptile owners, we've noticed the process of adopting a cat dog is different to how it goes with reptiles. It seems that reptile breeders tend to focus on showcasing morphs/aesthetics, but we want a companion with a personality to match ours. What's the best way to make sure our little buddy is compatible past just aesthetics? A lot of breeders we see sell on a first-come, first-served basis, and they sell out before you can really get a dialogue to learn more about an individual. Northern blue-tongued skink in our case.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll give you first so in case you couldn't hear the question clearly, it was, breeders of reptiles tend to focus more on aesthetics than they do on personality of the reptiles, and a lot of times they're just selling them like first come first serve, and you don't have a chance to really find out too much. About the individual personality of the reptile in question, and that's really valid. Hopefully something that we do on this channel, and I think it weighs into why breeders are that way. So let me explain that first. I think breeders are that way largely because though there is quite a bit of variation between individuals, in a lot of cases the exact species you pick is going to matter more than the individual. Not that individual doesn't matter, because it does. But the species is the big deal. And so they probably think, I want an animal that acts like this species, and I want it to look this way. And so that's why they kind of focus on the aesthetics. But you're right. Even if you know what species it is, you do want an individual that's right for you. For example, crested geckos and ball pythons, like I've had, those are the species I've kept the largest numbers of. And there's huge variation between personalities on them. Usually with a lot of interaction, you can get even less social ones to become more socialized. But that is a little bit harder. Hopefully our videos give you a bit more of a feel than you'll get almost anywhere else for what the personalities are really like of the species. And then, yeah, you're right. I mean, getting a bead on exactly what they're like, that individual, that's a big deal. Part of it is going to be picking your breeder. Part of it could also be picking them out in person. If you've got, going to expos and things can be really great for this. Though the animals tend to be cold and maybe not quite, at their normal temperament. There are places like Nerd that really focus a lot on the interaction with their animals. That's another thing, is a lot of breeders are not hardly interacting with their babies at all. They're just getting them, feeding and making sure they're healthy and sending them out the door. And so they just don't even know what the personalities are like necessarily. But if you go to a smaller breeder or somebody like Nerd, then you can probably inquire more about the individual. You got to realize with some of these places you are going to pay a premium for the fact that they're putting a lot more time into the individuals than are some of the larger scale breeders, and so they expect to pay for it. And something that I don't know this for sure, but something that I think would matter a lot would be if you told a breeder, you contacted them and say, I know that I'm really interested in the personality of this individual, and I would be willing to pay X amount of dollars extra if you can pick out an individual that has these personality traits that I'm searching for, and if we can have a little bit of back and forth, because I know your time is valuable and I'm willing to compensate you for it. I think that could allow you to get that dialogue that maybe normally they just, they don't have the time for, to pay them for it would, I think show them that you value their time. And they'd be willing to make it worth your while as well. That's just
awesome. Let's switch back over to the super chat.
Super chat. Super chat. Super chat.
Roger Marinelli says, sends a super chat and says, can you please say a word about finding reputable breeders for beginners? You convinced me to get a pink tongue skink, but I don't know who to pay.
I like it. I would say one of the this is what I do when I sometimes it's like if I'm looking for a small breeder, I don't know who they are, and so what I tend to do is I'll jump on social media, and I will find a group kind of devoted to that animal, and I'll just start asking around. And usually, like if there's one person that 10, 20 people are like, oh, I bought one from this person and it's been wonderful. They're so great. Their interaction, their care for their animals is great. That would be the best way I can tell you to do that. I mean, there are some breeders I know personally, and so like I'm going to tell you, Nerd. I like Nerd. I like Bertopia geckos. I like Great Basin Serpentarium. I can tell you about places like that where I know them, but Kyle Wilson. There are other breeders that I haven't interacted with, and it's not that they're not terrific. Right? There are a lot of terrific ones. So you want a pink tongue skink? Good choice. Find like a blue tongue and pink tongue group on social media and just start asking around.
Awesome. Let's see another super chat from Kirsten Kennerson. She says, what do you think is the coolest rodent? I love your channel. Have a good day.
The coolest rodent. For a long time growing up, I really loved chipmunks, and I still do, but they're not the coolest rodents. They're just really cool. Flying squirrels, be pretty bodacious. Capybaras, of course, awesome. Coolest rodent. Those leucistic squirrels are pretty cool. Let's see. Rats, obviously. And there's some great big rats. Those landmine finding rats, those are pretty awesome. Coolest rodent. Boy. I lived in a lot of houses with guinea pigs in them. But I don't think they're the coolest rodent. Golly. Let's start there. Those are some cool rodents. There might be one that'll jump out to me later.
Julie K sent us a super chat. Julie sent us a super chat. Thank you, Julie. Let's see. Our friend over at Northern Exotics sent us a super chat. He says, morning gecko update? Question mark. I have many eggs. Haha. Nice.
I've got quite a few eggs going as well. And yeah, we'll be talking more about morning geckos soon because they're amazing. Like I keep every time I interact with them, I'm like, I love these more than I thought I loved these. They're so great. Congratulations on your eggs.
All right, we got a new super chat relating to you doing some criticisms from your student. Merlin, which is also a Patreon user of ours, she sent a super chat that says, you sound like an amazing teacher. Love this.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you to say. I sure love teaching my classes. And, my desire always, I feel like there are some biology classes where it's like, I know this is all you're ever going to learn about biology, so I'm going to jam as much biology down your throat as I possibly can. And I feel like students may walk out of a class like that, like, I hope I never have to hear about biology again. And my great desire is that they walk out of biology like, I want to know more about biology. I want to keep learning about it for the rest of my life because it's so stinking rad. Anyway, I mean, reptiles are just like the tiniest little subset of it, and they're enough stinking rad to fill a lifetime.
So we've got another super chat from Waver in Darkness, once again, during your criticisms. Love watching you crack yourself up.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being so patient with me.
Let's see, another super chat from the Crazy Crafter that says, hognoses rule.
Hognoses do rule. They're, like if I could only keep one species of snake, they're on my short list. I don't know where I'd land, but I love them so much.
All right, let's take a Patreon question.
Patreon.
Elizabeth Dyson over on Patreon says, why do snakes and lizards shed? I know that invertebrates shed when they outgrow their exoskeleton. Lizards and snakes don't have an exoskeleton. Has the reason they shed got something to do with being exothermic?
Oh, no, we all do it. So this is a great question. So the arthropods and the nematode worms have what's called a cuticle, and they grow by means of ecdysis, which is essentially that their skeletons on the outside. It's like a suit of armor, and they can only get so big before they fill up that suit of armor, and then they have to grow a larger suit of armor inside of a smaller suit of armor that bursts open. They crawl out, and then they inflate up their new suit of armor to extra large, and then it hardens, and then they grow into it. And that's how they do. And that's not what's going on necessarily with the reptiles, although, I mean, it's a little bit similar. But you do the same thing. Like you just tend to shed your skin in a fine powder all over your house. And the squamate reptiles, for example, shed it all at once. But basically, it's just they're replacing skin as it becomes damaged and worn, and also it allows them to get a little bit bigger because the skin eventually is a little bit small, though it's quite stretchy also, and so that is why they do it. And yeah, I mean mammals do it also. We just don't do it all at once.
Awesome. Hey, we need to see the toad. The toads.
Okay. So, all right. Let's see here. So this is from Kennedy Wolf. And as I understand, Kennedy has a YouTube channel called Kennedy Wolf. So check it out. I hope they have a lot of updates on their toads. Goodness, and I will need to. Kennedy, if you're watching, will you put the species in there? So these are close relatives of the American toad, but they are not American toads. And as I understand it, one of the easiest ways to distinguish them from the American toads is that they don't eat earthworms when presented with earthworms, which is kind of funny. But try to relax for a second, and I will get one of these toads out for you. It looks like they're starting to eat. So we heard that they were going to send us some toads, and I knew they were kind of toadlets. I in Colorado, I grew up by a lake, and I'd see toadlets all the time. I have never seen toadlets like this.
These are the Fowler's toad.
Fowler's toad, that's right. Couldn't come up with it off the top of my head. All right. So let's see here. I'm not going to hassle them more than is absolutely necessary, because I don't want to lose them. And they're unbelievably tiny. Is that the cutest darn thing you've ever seen in your whole wide life? This is like colossal forced perspective. It is literally like the size of 4 BBs. I wish I could get that to focus better. I mean, look at it. That is a toad. I'm very nervous about these guys, but they've been, I think they've been eating flightless fruit flies. And so I am really going to work hard to have success with them. They're so cute. Oh, there's one more. They sent a total of 3. On the box, it said, well, in the letter, somewhere, they said they were sending 4, and there were only 3 cups, and I was like, oh, I've lost one. So it's a little bigger, but still quite dainty. Do you see it? That's ridiculous. They're so small. Anyway, there's a lot there's a lot that can happen with an animal this small and young. But I am really excited about them. I'm really hoping we have great success with them. So far, they're looking beautiful. Look at how tiny and cute they are. I love them. I love them so much. Let's see. Everybody safe and sound? Those are the toads. Are they so cute? Those are like the cutest toads. I've never seen toads that small. I used to live for 3 months. I lived on an island called the Neoteny. It's out in the middle of Lake Titicaca, and this is in Peru, right on the Peru-Bolivia border. It's about 4 to 6 hour boat ride from Puno, Peru. You can get there in about 45 minutes from a little town called Capachica, but you have to commission your own boat. I left the island to Capachica the last time I left it, and my boat, part of the engine driving the boat was a plastic bag. And about halfway through the lake, the engine cut out, and the guy piloting the boat sucked some fuel out of a fuel line and then poured it down the carburetor, and off we went. And that's not a big deal, except for the fact that you can't really survive in that lake for very long. So anyway, that's where I was, and there were a lot of toads on that island as well. They've also there's a type of aquatic frog that is only found in Lake Titicaca, and we could see those, and they spawned and stuff. I saw a lot of toadlets, and actually, now that I think about it, I believe that is the only place in my life that I have seen toads this small before. So cool. So cool. And they're back.
Awesome. All right. Brett sent a super chat, second super chat. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett.
Hey, I'm back. My female day gecko is very friendly and calm, and the male is very scared of people and always hides. I'm guessing that's common with them.
I would say it's, yeah, being skittish and hiding is not uncommon with day geckos, and also some of them are really nice. Probably a lot of it just depends on how used to humans being around they happen to be. I would say, generally speaking, though, and this is just across species, males tend to be more outgoing than females on average, generally because the selective pressures on males and females tend to be very different. Males have really, really variable reproductive success. And so males on average have to be very, very exceptional and take a lot of risks in order to have any success at all. And then they might have wild reproductive success. Whereas females have fairly constant reproductive success. And the main thing with females generally is just they have to not die. That's sort of the main goal with females. And so in many species, males will be more bold and outgoing, and females will be more likely to hide. But it can vary dramatically, depending on the exact species. That's just sort of on average.
Awesome. All right, we got an awesome couple of super chats. Mortimer Hoffman sent an awesome super chat saying, I work for an oddity shop, and we lost our wonderful hognose in an arson. We are now thinking of adopting an egg-eating snake. So, what are your thoughts on buying wild-caught animals for education?
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear about that loss, by the way. I think education is one of the better reasons that you can have an animal, period. And, wild-caught, of course, my number one place where I'm okay with wild-caught is experienced breeders that are, going to bring us a lot of captive bred babies. My biggest concern with wild-caught animals, I guess, there are two. One of them is ecological impact on the native population. And there's such a thing as a sustainable harvest from the wild. and there's also such a thing as an unsustainable harvest. So, a lot of that depends on, what's going on with the wild populations. Are the wild populations doing fine? Are they being fairly careful about regulation of the harvest, or are they being overharvested? Second thing is just, the fact that they're more likely to die. And that just stinks, right? That stinks for you. It stinks for the animals. And so given the choice, I would take captive bred every time. Egg-eating snakes, they would not be my first choice for an education animal just personally, largely just because of some of the difficulties of their diets. Unless you've got constant access, like if you're getting wild-caught adults, they're probably already going to be able to eat quail eggs. And so that's actually fairly accessible, fairly. If you have babies, you're on finch eggs. And, who has a continuous supply of finch eggs? I'm not quite sure. I mean, you can do things where you like inject egg goodness into their throats and things like that, but that's not great. And so anyway, those are sort of my thoughts.
Okay. Elaine Nami sent an excellent super chat saying, your enthusiasm and optimism is contagious, and we need that energy in our lives now more than ever. Corn snakes are hugely popular, but I think they are still overlooked and seen as boring. What are your thoughts?
They're a little what in feeding?
They are still overlooked and seen as boring.
Oh, okay. So okay. Thing number one, thank you so much. I am so glad. I'm an optimistic, enthusiastic person. I do a lot of things that I love, and I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to share it with other people, and it makes me so happy to hear that that's contagious. Because like my life is really wonderful. It's not that it's without difficulties and trials and things, but like I have so much to be thankful for and excited about, and I'm glad I get to share that, because I would love for the whole world to experience the kind of joy that I do. And I think the natural world is a huge part of that, and so I'm grateful to be able to share that with you as well. As far as corn snakes, totally overlooked and totally seen as boring. And I can tell you, I fall into that category a little bit as well. Sometimes I've struggled with the animals. It's like, well, everybody and their bearded dragon has a bearded dragon or a corn snake. And I don't know, but there's a reason everybody has them, and it's because they're excellent, right? They're excellent. Corn snakes are spectacular captive snakes. Just there's really, except for the fact that they're really good at escaping, there's just nothing not to love about a corn snake. They're the top scoring animal we've ever covered on this channel because they're awesome. And you're right. And nothing not to love about a corn snake except for the fact that they're too common. And they're common for a reason, because they're awesome.
Awesome. Let's see. Northern Exotics is back with another super chat.
Thank you.
Can dart frogs and mourning frogs cohab?
Probably morning geckos?
Sorry, mourning geckos, yes.
Yeah. They seem to actually do really well together. I'm not going to say they do better than they would in isolation, because I would be shocked to find out that's the case. But they seem to tolerate each other well. So some reasons they do well together, and some reasons that you might not want to keep them together. Reasons they do well together are that they both are going to eat fruit flies, which is great. They're both eat things that are very small, so they're very unlikely to attack one another or bite one another. Also, mourning geckos tend to hang out up high and dart frogs on the ground, so they're not really going to interfere with each other all that much. That said, accidents can happen. You could have a situation where, especially a mourning gecko could be bullying a dart frog. It's pretty easy for the mourning geckos to get away from the dart frogs, but not very easy for the dart frogs to get away from the mourning geckos. And so, they could really stress each other out because they're hassling the heck out of each other. There could also be diseases that they carry that they could transmit to one another. These are just, cohabbing has its risks. It also has its payoffs. I mean, one thing is, if you could set say you had, a small colony of mourning geckos and 4 or 5 dart frogs. You could set them all up in each one having its own tiny little enclosure, or you could set them up in one just monumental super enclosure. And that would be awesome. Plus, seeing the interaction between individuals is really interesting and really fun. It's something that's really, really well accepted in the aquarium world, even though you're running the same sorts of risks in the aquarium world. With fish, everybody's pretty cool with it. With reptiles and amphibians, it's a lot sketchier. Same sorts of risks. It's the same sorts of risks and the same sorts of payoffs. And so, it's really like, where do you stand on those two things? But as cohabbing goes, that seems to be one of the better combos I know of. And if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. Like I haven't researched this right now, but it's something I've considered. Like in the reptile room, it would make an amazing display. It's also a display of something that I don't want people to do just willy-nilly. You still there, Mr. Jason?
Sorry, I was on mute. All right, let's switch over to a Patreon question. Nicholas Cadman says, Clint, you are amazing and currently the number one person I would love to get to meet in person. Then comes Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds, congratulations.
Well, thank you so much.
I just got my first pet reptile this morning, which is a male snow leopard gecko. My decision was heavily influenced by your videos. My question is, can you recommend any media, either books, websites, or videos, that would expand further on your videos about the raddest topic in the world, genetics?
Ooh. Of course, if you start getting into a lot of, there are probably some really great YouTube channels on genetics that aren't going to be talking necessarily about reptile genetics, but just genetics generally. The nice thing is, if you're talking about diploid organisms, it pretty much works the same way for everything. And so if you want more detail there, that would be a good place to go, probably YouTube, college textbooks. I really did give kind of at least an introductory biology college level education on genetics in our genetics videos. Those are not just about ball pythons. They're about everything, and that's the way the genetics works. And I think you can be a master of genetics right there. But I myself, I'm not a geneticist, and so there are places you could dig in much deeper than I'm capable of taking you, and that'd be great. Yeah, I'd say there are probably some YouTube channels, but textbooks, you're going to start running into textbooks. That's going to be the place to go.
All right, another Patreon question from Maxwell Lyman. He says, Clint, love your content and love all you do. I am currently trying to build my own 4x2x2 enclosure for my beardy and wanted to know if there is any types of wood I should stay away from because of potential safety hazards that may affect my reptile. Example, cedar and pine shaving and their chemicals affecting snakes, etc. Is there any wood that you would recommend as safe?
Oh, so yeah, stay away from cedar, of course. And then as far as being safe, a lot of your other woods are safe, but I would do a quick Google search on any of them before, just like if you found one, you're like, this is great, just do a quick Google search and verify, because some of them outgas stuff that's just you wouldn't want in your enclosure.
Awesome. Let's do a super chat.
Super chat.
There it is. Let's see. Edwin Lee says, what can I do about glass surfing in snakes?
Glass surfing.
Yes.
So I assume this is probably a term for when the snake comes up against the side and is doing a lot of this?
Yes.
Trying to get to the bottom of why the snake is so restless might be a good one. It could be that it is not very content with the temperatures or the humidity level inside the enclosure, and it's trying to get out. So that would be a good one. They are just going to explore, though, and when there are glass boundaries, they're not there's nothing in the wild that they would run into like this. This just transparent, impenetrable boundary. And so, this is the problem you run into worse with tortoises. Tortoises just never seem to figure it out. They're just bang, bang, bang. And so, to some degree, they're going to do it. But if it's happening all the time, try to figure out why the snake is so restless.
Awesome. All right, and I think for one of the best super chats that we've ever gotten, Jeremy Farkas, that sounds familiar. I think he sent one earlier. Yes, he did. He says, "Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?"
Okay, so in case you couldn't hear this question, I kind of saw this one run by and I was distracted by it. I'm like, I gotta ignore it, Jason. They'll get to it. Okay, so, and I didn't read the whole question. So, would I rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? I have to fight them. One horse-sized duck. Oh boy. I mean, I would have to go with the duck-sized horses. Almost certainly. Because I'm pretty sure a horse-sized duck could easily kill me. That's like it's bigger than a Utah raptor at that point. It's I don't. That seems like that's a death sentence. Where I think I could take on 100 duck-sized horses. I would rather fight 100 duck-sized horses than 100 ducks, because horses don't fly. And the other beneficial thing would, well, here's something to consider. This is something I hadn't thought about. If it's a horse-sized duck, it's going to depend on the way that I either scaled them up or scaled them down. Either way, this could be very beneficial for me, because if I take a duck and I scale it up to the size of a horse, it suddenly has much less surface area relative to its volume. And it's probably going to overheat and die fairly quickly. So, and it won't be able to fly because it's too heavy for that. Again, the surface area to volume ratio issue. So it'll be a flightless, and its legs might not be strong enough to support it, where those little horses are going to be really fast. All right, change my answer. Fighting the big duck, because that big duck is probably standing on broken legs, kind of flopping about and waiting to die of heat stroke. I'll fight that.
Wow, that was way more thought than I had anticipated.
Oh, these sorts of questions are serious, Jason. You don't just, this is life and death.
All right, let's do another super chat.
Super chat? Wait.
Super chat.
Yeah.
Using my voice like a fool.
That job. Why are you still saying it?
What was that?
You've outsourced the
Yeah.
Why are you still saying it?
Like a fool.
All right. Let's see. Merlin, a Patreon, also sent a super chat. She says, if at all possible, can we have more tiny python videos? Spotted, and I can't remember any other names right now. But she was interested
like the Stimson's python.
Tiny python.
Yes, I'd like that. A lot of it has just come to which ones can I get my hands on. But I think that would be good. A lot of them are going to be real similar to the children's python, at least from the other Australian mini pythons. So, a lot of what you read or what you heard in that video will apply as well. But yeah, I think that's a thing we will do in the future for sure.
All right. Let's see. Let's switch over to Patreon questions. Robert Watson asked, in your recent videos, there has been an enclosure in the background with a water feature. Is that just a display enclosure, or does it have an animal living in it? If so, which animal lives in there?
It has an animal living in it. That animal is a female guppy. She's cycling the water so that I can potentially add more things. I'm considering some things for that tank. Kind of top of my list right now might be reed frogs. So Well, maybe we'll have a talk with Josh's frogs and see if they'd maybe like to do something with reed frogs, because reed frogs, the tank is kind of it's mostly to be beautiful, which means it's not really perfect for very many things, but it might be perfect for reed frogs, and so I'll give that some serious thought.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Still in Patreon, Merlin actually sent a Patreon question as well. So let me get that going. She says, first off, please do a how to deal with animals dying video. And she also said, any chance for more mammal videos in the somewhat near future? I would especially love a rabbit episode.
A rabbits episode. That's a good idea. I've got actually a lot of family that have rabbits, so that would be a pretty easy video for us to put together. And yes, I think we do need to do it. I think we need to do an animals dying video, because that is a heavy subject and it's real. And I think a lot of people are experiencing a lot of pain. And I genuinely think it's something in the reptile hobby that we almost can't talk about. I know we'll take some flack for talking about it, but it's I think it matters to it matters. It matters, and it's worth doing. And so I think we will. And as far as more mammals, yeah, I think there are some mammals that we should definitely cover, especially armadillos and opossums. If anybody in Utah has an opossum they want to hook us up with, that would fill me with joy. I love them so much. I wish they were rodents so I could have answered the question earlier.
All right.
But they're not even close.
Another super chat. Alex Hayleys sent in super chat saying, what are some endangered U.S. reptiles that need help?
Okay. San Francisco garter snake, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously. Stinking rabbit. It's maybe the coolest garter snake in the world. Pretty much only found in San Francisco. It's really well protected there, but obviously, like San Francisco, lots of people, not a lot of open spaces, and it's going to be habitat destruction that's going to be the issue for about any endangered reptiles. I mean, here I know there's a lot of species that have small ranges that they're protected from collecting and things like that. Utah mountain king snakes, seems like they're loosening things up with that. In addition to habitat destruction, our native desert tortoises are going to be one. Another thing are going to be the effects of introduced species can be difficult. Oh, some of the box turtle species. There's actually a lot. There are a lot of them, and it's usually not because of human over collecting or something. It's usually because of just habitat destruction and just the fact that they're crossing roads and just having a hard time. We're cutting up large areas of potential habitat. We're draining swamps. We're doing things like that.
Makes sense. All right. We are getting a little bit low on time.
Yes.
Should we do some lightning round?
Yeah, let's do this. So we give you something to plan on. We'll do a quick lightning round, and then I'll read a few more quotes from the semester. Maybe we'll save some for the future as well. Because I got 4 pages, we've only done 1. Does that sound good?
Watch Clint barely be able to talk while he laughs so hard at jokes he said in the past. That's the segment.
A lot of them, I didn't even think of them as jokes. They're just silly things I said, but it makes me laugh that they stood out to someone else enough for them to write them down and type them up and send them out to the class. It makes it just, it's so fun.
All right. Lightning round. The tiger asks, can animals evolve to photosynthesize?
Oh, potentially. Not anytime soon, but we might help with that because, it wouldn't be rocket surgery. The chloroplast is a separate living being that exists within plant cells, but it's essentially a bacterial cell that was engulfed by a plant cell very long ago, just like mitochondria. And this is lightning round, right? And so you can potentially move those and the few regulatory genes that are in the nucleus into other organisms. Like they've talked about doing it with photosynthetic salmon, because then they would be essentially salmon that, as long as they're exposed to water and light, they're going to just grow into meat. So you're turning sunlight straight into meat. And that'd be pretty neat. No rhyme intended.
I need to do a better job of screening these questions, I guess. That was the slowest lightning ever.
Sorry, but that was as lightning as it gets.
Let's see. What are your thoughts on lace monitors, and what held you back from putting them on your list of the best pet monitors? This is from Ad Hamill.
If I lived in Australia, absolutely nothing would have stopped me from putting them on that list. Nothing. There would have been no holding me back. I love lace monitors so much. When we were in New Zealand, we went to a zoo there because that's what I do when I go to other countries. And Leisha was like amazed that I just wanted to spend tons of time just watching the lace monitors. I love them so much. Here in the United States, they're hard to find and they're expensive, and that's why they weren't on that list.
All right, D10 says, could we get an Eastern hognose video?
I'd like that. I don't know anybody around here who has Easterns. I probably do. I just don't know they have Easterns. And that's actually part of the reason that I said yes to toads. Not so I would feed the toads to them, but so I would have toads so I could send feeders to potentially have Eastern hognoses someday.
All right. Matt M asks, will there be a video on neon day geckos?
I would like that very much, because I recently have become obsessed with neon day geckos. They're out of this world, ridiculously spectacular. And I know Josh's Frogs has them, and I'm pretty excited about them.
Let's see. Jeremy Farkas says, care to comment on the tegus in the news lately?
Oh, yeah, I'll comment quickly. Like, it stinks. It stinks that there are tegus, feral tegus, and it stinks that they get a really, really, really disproportionate amount of negative news coverage. I mean, I get comments now all the time on our tegu video complaining, oh yeah, this is the reason. Well, like, they're ruining our ecosystem. No, cats and dogs are ruining the ecosystem, but tegus are also contributing in a negative way. We don't talk about cats and dogs because there'd be outrage, and tegus make a great punching bag. And they're big and they're impressive, and it just stinks. It stinks. It's bad PR, and that's why, in the reptile community, it's a small percentage of people that know how rad these animals are. And you got to paint them in a great light, because they are fighting an uphill battle.
All right. Anime Villains asks, can you do a pink-bellied slider turtle video, please?
A what one?
Pink-bellied slider turtle.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're talking about like the Western painted turtles, or if you're talking about the pink belly side neck turtle. Either way, yeah, that would be awesome. I'd like that. Or maybe something I don't know about.
Pac-Man frogs make good pets.
Kind of.
By Hayden.
Yes, they can be really cool. I mean, they don't do a whole lot. It's like a decoration that eats mice. But they're pretty awesome. Inbreeding is starting to become a problem for them, though.
Roger Marnelli says, would you trust FedEx to ship live critters right now?
Yes, but not as much as normal. We just recently got a shipment with the toads in it, and it took an extra day to get here. And so when they're shipping, just make sure that they're taking that into account. They should be okay, but that's not ideal. An extra day on an overnight shipment is a lot of extra time.
J.R. Pone says, do a video on sea snakes.
Ooh, I would like that. Do you have a sea snake I could borrow?
Sophie Monroe says, hello, I'm a huge fan. I love all reptiles.
You're okay by me, Sophie?
Let's see. Boo Boom Room says, hey, Clint, I just subbed.
Thank you. Glad to have you. I'm glad you found us.
Let's see. Super Sentansky says, Brachiosaurus or Triceratops as a first pet dinosaur.
Both of those are just a horrible choice. The Triceratops, the problem with it is enormous, and it has a lot of weapons, right? And so and they're going to eat a lot. Like that's a nightmarish pet, but nothing like a brachiosaur. Just because, how are you even going to feed the darn thing, right? They are. I mean, a Triceratops is a preposterously large animal, and a brachiosaurus is many, many, many times larger. Do not buy either of these as a whim.
That's a valid point. Let's see. Bob's Dank Tanks says, are there any major differences between red tegus and black and white tegus?
Oh, there are different. Yeah. So are there differences between red and black and white tegus? As long as you're talking about Argentine tegus, behaviorally they're both great. Red tegus usually are a little bit shorter and a little bit rounder, but they're both great. They're both real great.
All right. Let's see. Jack Bellis says, I'm getting an axolotl and a Kenyan Dembo. Does anyone have any tips? Do you have any tips?
No, not more than we've covered in our videos necessarily. Just make sure that water quality and temperature are really good for that axolotl. And then sand boas, they're cool. It seems like there can be a lot of variation in how bitey they are. And so if you don't want to be bitten, maybe buy one that's not very bitey.
I like it.
Lightning.
Let's see. Ad Hamill says, would you rather care for a Godzilla or another kaiju like King something? I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. From Pacific Rim, or a Nile monitor?
Oh, realistically, a Nile monitor. Godzilla, the fire hazard alone is a reason not to get one. Then there's the size.
Oh, man. Making it real, Clint.
Yeah.
Sorry. Brooks Merkett says, will you do a video on...
You still there?
Sorry, can you not hear me?
No. Will I do a video on?
No. Sorry, what?
You said, will I do a video on? And that was the last I could hear.
Oh, tarantulas.
Oh, tarantulas? Yeah, I'd like that. I like tarantulas much.
All right. Let's see. Worldwide Tropical says, hey, I got a leopard gecko.
Good choice. Can I grab a quick one I just see here on the screen? Is there any pet reptiles that you don't recommend? Heck yes, there are. Lots of them. Green iguanas might be on that list. Nile monitors, savanna monitors. Let's see. A lot of them that just don't do very well in captivity so far, like horned lizards, Draco volans, the flying dragon. Though there's hope when it comes to especially the flying dragons. Like there are some people that are having success with them. It's just most people watch them die. For similar reasons, like dragon snakes. There are lots. There are lots. Anything that's being over harvested from the wild. Sorry, I'm back.
We got some awesome super chats. We got an awesome super chat from Wandering Willow. Wandering Willow says, first Clint stream. Thanks for all the useful info from all your videos. But would love one on the golden tegu.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm glad that you could join us today. And yeah, I'd like to do golden tegus as well. That'd be awesome. I love the Tiids, so that'd be great.
We got another awesome super chat from Thor Cox, who says, missed most of the stream, love the channel, long-time viewer. I want to get into skink breeding. Any pointers?
Whew. It's going to depend a lot on the specific skink. Some skinks can be pretty aggressive towards one another, and it seems like getting the timing right on pairings can be a big deal. And then, of course, are they a live bearer? Are they an egg layer? Getting them the proper places to lay. These things are all really important.
Okay. Let's see. We got a Patreon question real quick, and then we should do some of your quotes.
Okay.
Your criticisms. Elizabeth Dyson asked, are tropical woodlice a type of isopod, or is there another isopod that is a good option for bioactives?
Wood louse is usually synonymous with roly-poly, which is their isopods. But it's a common name, and so I would have to know exactly which one you're referring to, because there are also some millipedes that look a lot like isopods. Yeah, as far as the exact species, they probably are great. If you collect any from the wild, breed them out for a few generations before you introduce them to your tanks to get rid of parasites and any chemicals they might have been exposed to. And then also just be a little bit careful with the species, because there are some species that'll munch on your pets.
Awesome. Okay, let's do some Clintisms.
Okay. Well, I'll get a few more, and we'll save some for the future. Okay. It was pretty obvious that stuff doesn't stay the same. I think that was referring to, a lot of people think that evolution was Darwin's idea. Twasn't. They just didn't have an explanation for why. What a great day. Have some energy. Let's see. Man, I like the schnoz on you. I think that's when we were discussing the proboscis monkey. Like you do. Let's say it's a polygamous situation on the beach. Some of these things are pretty funny out of context. Oh. I gotta do it in the voice. This is my beach. It's not the best beach in the world, but it's my beach. My beach is your beach. She wrote it in the, alternating capital lowercase letters just so that the voice was emphasized. Okay. They do have silly necks. Not sure what that's referring to. Maybe me. Maybe Matamatas. Could be anything. Oh no! I think this maybe tips it off. Because when you're a giraffe, you can't hide. Bam! Gotcha! You should be dead now. I'm not even sure what that's talking about.
Man, context would be great.
Oh, it might have to do with this next one. They are the Apache attack helicopter of the fly world. I'm pretty sure I'm talking about robber flies, because they're hardcore and awesome. Oh, the ladyfish like that sword a lot. Sorry I use so much technical jargon when I teach. Hopefully you guys are following this. This one's a Simpsons quote. In your face, Space Coyote. Okay. I've heard that there's some demand for pedigrees. Can you dig it? You've probably heard that before. So, birds are a thing. That's something I actually have to talk about on our video a lot, because when I tell people that birds fall into the clade of reptiles, if there's such a clade, then birds have to be in it. They're like, no, birds are a thing. Birds are a thing. Birds are real, just like crocodiles are real, or turtles are real, or lizards are real, or snakes are real. They're all real groups, right? Birds are a clade. It's just reptiles, without including the birds, not a monophyletic clade. I've just cut the birds out for no apparent reason. I'm just like, you're too weird to be in my clade. You're not part of my family anymore. One bone, two bones, many bones. That's the vertebrate arm. I'm thinking about animals and stuff. I don't know what the context was for that one. A gram is exactly not very much. Oh, sorry. Oh, dear.
You are hilarious.
Aren't they rad? They can have their own drawer.
You make yourself crack yourself up, man.
I crack myself up when other people quote me back to me. Oh, should I do one more? Last one. Okay. Plants are well known because they make sugar. Oh, goodness. I'm glad we have enough of those for a couple more live streams. Oh. Well, should I wrap up?
I think it's time.
Guys, hey, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your patience with me being late, and thank you for your support for my family. You guys are just the greatest community. I love spending time with you. It's so rejuvenating to be around you. Like you guys say my enthusiasm is contagious. Well, your enthusiasm is contagious for me as well. It's a vicious cycle of joy and happiness. And I'm really glad that you were here today to be a part of it. A lot of people have been saying they'd love for us to keep doing these live streams. The world's starting to open up a little bit more, but we'll definitely keep going for a while. And you let us know when you're tired of us. But we love you. Thank you very much for making the world a better place, for standing up for the reptiles and showing people what amazing creatures they are. As always, like and subscribe. We hope to see you real soon.